Well, Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on Clemson at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to talk recruiting tonight, obviously give you guys a recruiting update. There are guys that have their commitments coming up in the near future that Clemson should be watching very closely. We're going to talk about some sophomores that we're going to give some projections on and what season that we think an impact they could have on the team this year. And then we're going to wrap it all up tonight and talk about the evolution of the Clemson offense and what it'll look like, according to us, in year 3 under Garrett Riley. All of that and more coming up in tonight's episode. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Get us to that 6,000 subscriber goal. Share this video with all of your college football friends, family, anybody that likes to consume college football content. Shoot them our way. Give them a link to our channel. Share these episodes that we do and bring them on board, and that would be greatly appreciated. If you would like to support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show and Clemson at the Voice of College Football, consider becoming a channel member. We got memberships available, and as the season rolls around, we will be doing members only exclusive content for those that choose to support the channel in that way. We also have the super chat feature, of course, available for you guys. If you want to be sure that your comment and or question is read and responded to during this live show, hit that super chat feature for us, and your support is greatly appreciated. And with all of that said, and without further ado, I'm going to bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. What's up, Jordan? How you doing tonight?
Good, man. What's up? Hope everybody is having a good night or a good evening. I hope everybody had an awesome Father's Day. Shout out to all the fathers out there. You guys mean everything and then some. It's one of the most important jobs in the world. So those of you in our audience that are fathers, happy Father's Day, belated Father's Day. That's right. And hope that your weekend was good.
Absolutely. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Underrated job, but very important, as you said, Jordan. So hopefully everybody who is a father out there had a great Father's Day and got the honor that they deserved. But yeah, sorry we're getting started later tonight, guys. It's my fault, just running late. Just running behind. So we're going to talk about kind of, reworking our time frame for the show and things like that. So stay tuned to the community tab and announcements for possibly a time change or a day change in the show. Again, we don't like making those changes, but, unfortunately, sometimes we have to. It's better than starting late every single episode and leaving you guys waiting for 30 minutes because, I'm running late. So I do apologize for that, but I think thankful for all of you guys sticking around and waiting for us to get to the show tonight. We're not going to waste a whole lot of time at the top of the show. So let me give a quick shout out to the comment section, and then we're going to dive right into the planned portion of the show. Jordan, we got Billy Cotton in here. First comment of the night. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. Hands Like Canelo is in here. All right. Well, got a boxer in here, I guess. Dylan Spell, Christian. John Sarian, one of our great moderators in here. Intelligent Savage, always in here. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Let's see. Isaac Smith is in here. Dylan Spell. And I think I hit everybody. If I missed you, I apologize. Thank you guys so much for getting in here. Get your comments in. As you guys know, as we get through the planned portion of the show, we'll spend the end of the show just chopping it up with you guys in the comment section, answering your questions, and letting you drive the rest of the show. So with all of that said, and without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the show tonight. Obviously, we got a big recruiting update for you guys. A lot going on in the recruiting world. Some big-time names that Clemson is going after currently have recruitment dates set for the not-so-distant future. Guys have been on, obviously, it's official visit season, going to various schools. So, Jordan, let's just give everybody a kind of rundown of where this class stands right now. Obviously, Clemson has done an amazing job in the 2026 class so far. We are still ranked comfortably in top. We are still ranked in that top 5 spot. Will we end up there? Probably not, but it's a solid class so far. We've talked about the amazing class that Matt Luke has brought in on the offensive line side of things and how we're kind of done as far as the offensive line goes, but there's still a lot of key pieces out there that Clemson's in the market for, right? Some defensive ends that Clemson's in the market for and various positions. So just give us a quick rundown of guys that Clemson fans should be paying attention to and guys that have their commitment date set for the not too distant future.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the one that I think, a lot of people I've already seen a couple of comments asking about it earlier in the show. I'll start with defensive end Dre Quinn. He's set to make his announcement tomorrow, actually. He's picking between Clemson or Texas. This is a recruitment that, at different points, I felt like Clemson was in really good spot for. Obviously, if those of you that pay attention to the 24/7 Sports, Crystal Balls, or On 3 predictions and all that, you've probably seen a couple of predictions in for Texas. Texas does have a lot of confidence, going into his announcement. But from what I've been able to gather, from what I've been able to read, neither program feels like they are out of it. So I'll say that. So, this is one of those recruitments where, the player has kept things close to the vest. He's said all the right things to both parties. We'll see who comes out on top. Texas feels good, but Clemson doesn't feel like Clemson hasn't been notified of a decision either. So I think this is one that, is not necessarily a done deal yet. So we'll kind of see what happens. I did say Dre Quinn is a recruit that I feel like Clemson needs to land as far as their defensive line class is concerned. It would really bolster that. But Texas, when Texas comes calling and the money starts flowing around, you never know. That's one of the things that you have to contend with in this age of recruiting. And I think Clemson's in a much better spot, in that regard than they were a couple of years ago, but doesn't mean they're going to be able to, if Texas really wants to outspend somebody, they will outspend you. So that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind too. And that's going to be a recurring theme for a couple of other guys I'm going to mention. But so that's the one that I think everybody's going to be keeping an eye on as far as tomorrow is concerned. But I think that's the recruit that I feel like Clemson, needs to land for their defensive line class. I've already talked about Bryce Perry-Wright, who's also coming off of a visit to Texas, and Texas feels pretty good. It feels like they did a good job with his visit as well. We'll see. We'll see how that goes because I still think Clemson feels very confident as well. So, it's going to be another one of those recruitments potentially where both sides feel good about where they are, and we'll see what happens when the announcement is made. Some other names that I wanted to mention, 4-star safety Blake Stewart. I feel like Clemson is trending in a good direction with him. I think it's going to come down to Clemson and Miami for his announcement. We will see. But I think Clemson has been very, very consistent, and they've done a good job since he came in for the elite retreat, and they've been, really building up steam. Because Blake Stewart, this was a recruitment that many felt was a done deal to Miami a while ago, and the fact that he hasn't pulled the trigger, I think that says everything about what Clemson has done as far as their efforts, and it would be a massive punctuation mark to land him as the kind of the bookend to your safety class that already includes the likes of Polo Anderson and Caden Gebhardt. So, keep that in mind as well. There's still a corner out there on the board in Danny Odom. I still feel like he's going to end up at Ohio State. It's probably why I haven't mentioned him as much, even though he's a name that's been floating around for Clemson. I think he likes Clemson, but I think Ohio State's going to end up being the choice there. And then one last guy I'll mention, probably the biggest name on the board, Tyler Atkinson. He just recently announced his plans to visit Texas this weekend. Another recurring theme, like I said, with these Texas with these Georgia kids getting, Texas is really trying to get into the state. So this is going to be a very big swing kind of point in Clemson's recruiting cycle, because you've got Bryce Perry-White already at Buford, and Dre Quinn at Buford, and they're both going to be deciding between probably Clemson or Texas, and then now Tyler Atkinson, who at one point was considered an Ohio State lean. That looks like that official visit isn't even going to happen, and Texas has taken their place. So I think that says a lot about what Texas is doing out there on the trail too. So, these are kind of the biggest names. Also, Jay Lamar is still out there on the board at running back. I think that's going to come down to a Clemson, Georgia, Miami type of battle. I think all three programs have felt good at different points. And I think that one is still kind of, it'll be clear probably within the next month or so. So those are the names I want to mention. That's just a little recruiting update. If you guys have any questions about any other names. Wide receiver Devin Fitzgerald, I think is going to end up at Notre Dame. I always was kind of skeptical about Clemson taking a fourth receiver. I felt like Devin Fitzgerald would be a good fit, for what he brings from a skill set standpoint, body type standpoint. But it didn't really make sense, I think, for him necessarily, when Notre Dame certainly has more open spots, but that's one of those things that they did a really good job on his official visit weekend. Clemson really liked him, but I think obviously the opportunity for playing time early is more at Notre Dame right now. So I think it makes more sense on his end.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a lot of stuff, kind of irons in the fire right now, if you will, for Clemson and the recruiting, and going head to head with you. You mentioned Texas. It's a little bit different. They're out there putting Lamborghinis on the field for these guys, which is just a wild thing to me. That college football has come to a point where in recruiting, we're putting Lamborghinis on a football field during an official visit weekend. Basically having a car lot on our football field to convince recruits to come. But we'll see. There's a lot of big stuff. Dre Quinn, that would be a huge get for Clemson. It'll be interesting to see where Clemson will pivot if they don't land him. I think it's absolutely necessary to land him, or either Bryce Perry-Wright, White, at least one of those guys, preferably both.
Yes.
But you need at least one of those guys, and maybe if that doesn't, if you get one of those guys, say Quinn goes to Texas and you get White, you could possibly fill something in the transfer portal if you had to, or pivot to somebody else that you like, that's still within reach for this class. But that's certainly going to be an interesting thing to watch, and we won't have to wait very long to find out where Dre Quinn's going to go. Obviously, Texas made a big impression on him this weekend, so we'll kind of see where that goes. You mentioned Atkinson taking his official visit to Texas instead of Ohio State, so that's another huge. Seems like we're battling Texas a lot here to kind of close out the class, if you will, for some of the bigger names that we've been in for quite some time now. So I don't know. I know at one point he was, crystal balled to Clemson, but I think we had a question here as far as recruiting goes. John Sarian says, has Blake Stewart had his official visit to Clemson yet?
I think, oh my God. All right, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, that was, I got a phone call. That was weird. Yeah. What was the question? Has Blake Stewart had his official visit to Clemson yet? Yes. And I think that the understanding, he was at the official visit weekend with Tylen Wilson, the other safety prospect that Clemson was kind of in for. I think he's going to end up at Texas A&M. But I think Blake Stewart has been the best in the best position for Clemson as far as potentially landing that third safety in the class. We'll kind of see how things go. And that actually reminds me, Keshawn Stancil, obviously he had his official visit to Clemson this past weekend. Clemson did make an exception for him, as he was a later addition. I think that's going to come down between Clemson and NC State. I like where Clemson sits a lot right now. So, that's big for, your defensive tackle recruiting potentially if you land him as well. So I think that's a really, really good development, because then it kind of puts less stress potentially on, Bryce Perry-Wright to be that defensive tackle. Maybe he can be your defensive intake if Quinn ends up going to Texas. There's some fluidity there because Bryce Perry-Wright is a guy that can play any position. He's kind of undersized at D tackle, but I think that's ultimately where he projects because of kind of his power. He's very much like Grady Jarrett in a lot of ways. I think he's only 6 foot. But he can play. His twitch and athleticism and his motor, the motor that he plays with, reminds me a lot of Grady Jarrett. And you could probably play him on the edge too if you want. And some schools are recruiting him at edge. But yeah, so that's defensive line recruiting. Blake Stewart, I think is a guy that you're very much in it for. I think it's going to come down between Clemson and Miami at the end of the day.
Yeah, seems to be a 2-horse race there, much like a lot of these guys. Dylan Spell says Clemson can get you a BMW, and Texas will get you a Lamborghini. Yeah, there's some different money there. I'll give you that. Also, follow-up question to that, Jordan. What is your confidence level on Quinn committing to Clemson tomorrow? If you had to put a number on it, where are you sitting right now?
I would probably go. I'd probably go 50-50. I mean, but like I said, I think maybe 45-55 in favor of Texas, something like that.
Yeah.
I think Texas has a lot of confidence, and they have good reason to be confident. But that doesn't. But that's. I think Clemson feels good too, and so somebody's getting played a little bit. That's the fun aspects of these types of recruitments is you just get you get real anticipation. You don't get the certainty of a crystal ball, even though some Texas insiders did put a crystal ball, but you haven't seen any national guys do it. And I think that's kind of the sign of whether or not there's real confirmation on one end or the other. I think that's one thing to keep in mind, because I think Quinn came out saying that Texas was his best visit yet. Does that mean what you think it means?
Right.
It might. That might actually be the case, but sometimes reverse psychology, trying to drum up suspense. you know how these kids are. These,
Oh yeah, man.
So
Some of these kids are all about the recruiting process and the drama and the attention that comes with it, and some aren't, and so you're going to see a lot of that stuff. I think him saying Texas was his best visit. I mean, you could read into that and be like, Texas blew him away, and he's going to go ahead and commit to Texas, but I think Clemson's still in a pretty good situation as far as the recruitment goes. None of us really know, but I'm hoping. Yeah. And if it's 50-50 right now, I think that you can live with that after the visit that he just had at Texas, because they went all in. That's for sure.
Yes, they did. This kind of has the feel of a little bit of like the Corian Gibson recruitment a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
They're up into his announcement, Clemson, there was, after his official visit weekend at Clemson, the crystal balls came rolling in for Clemson, but he didn't pull the trigger. He didn't commit. He took his visits, and I believe he committed on his birthday in July, or it was either July or late June, and there was confidence on Texas's end after he took his official visit weekend there that he was going to he was going to end up a Longhorn, and there were some crystal balls that came in pretty late in that process too, and then he ends up committing to Clemson. So one of these things, when these kids play things close to the vest, that's exactly what it is. They played it close to the vest. So even like the insiders and writers who are covering recruiting don't always have a good feel. They can go off of what they get from people within the program about, hey, well, he's telling us this and he's telling us that, and we feel good about this and we feel good about that. But at the end of the day, if if you don't get he committed to the staff on so and so date, it's not always a done deal, and he has made his decision, according to multiple college football recruiting writers, that he did make his decision, I believe, on Monday, so privately. So we'll see whether or not the announcement is in favor of Clemson or not.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely. We'll find out tomorrow. Jordan, hopefully we're popping on and making an exciting video for the Clemson Tigers at some point in time tomorrow, possibly.
Yeah, potentially. Let's bank on that.
Let's hope for that. All right, Clemson alum gets in and says, where do we go at linebacker if we don't get Tyler Atkinson?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I'd like to know.
Kind of went all in on him, and although I'm sure behind the scenes, Jordan, they obviously have some plans for if he commits elsewhere, but they really have just kind of gone all in on Tyler Atkinson and made sure that he understands that he's a massive priority for Clemson in this class.
Yeah. They've gone all in as far as the resources and all of that. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely, those conversations are being had, and they just because a guy doesn't have just because like Clemson doesn't have any outstanding offers elsewhere doesn't mean they're not talking to other kids and they haven't communicated. That's always, I mean, if you know what you're doing, even a program like Clemson that doesn't offer a ton of kids, they do, stay in contact with players of interest and guys that they like. So as far as a specific name, beats me. I mean, they let the only other outstanding linebacker offer was Caleb Gordon, who committed to Arkansas, and Clemson was okay with him going, matriculating over there, because they felt like they needed to put all their chips in on Tyler Atkinson. So as far as where they pivot, your guess is as good as mine right now.
Right. Yeah, same here. But again, and there are fans out there that kind of criticize that way of recruiting, kind of going all in on one guy. because it can set you up for, some disappointment, and maybe having to take a guy that may not be as talented because you kind of went all in on that big name. But again, these coaches are smart. I think Clemson does a great job on the recruiting side of things, and rest assured they have some sort of backup plan if Tyler Atkinson goes elsewhere. We just don't know where that is. But I'm sure Ben Boulware and that recruiting and coaching staff know where they're going to go and what the plan is. John Sarian says defensive end is one of the most competitive positions, not named quarterback, as far as money. Yeah, it's certainly becoming. It's quickly becoming that next tier right under quarterback as far as the money being thrown around for these big time defensive end prospects.
Yeah, I mean, a premium edge rusher is going for about as much as any other position right now, because those are truly come at a premium. A lot. Obviously quarterbacks get all the attention, and they do get the large share of NIL opportunities at a high school, but a lot of people would think of that you get more attention from the wide receivers and all that, but and even offensive linemen, but the biggest money outside of quarterback being spent right now, based off of anecdotal evidence, but based off of a good amount of anecdotal evidence at this point,
Right.
It's defensive end, because premium edge rushers are truly, they come at a premium, and they disproportionately impact the game in ways that most other positions, or really any other position on defense does.
Yes.
So it is a premium position of premium positions.
No doubt about it, and that's proven to be true as you're watching more and more of these recruitments go on with these high level defensive end prospects. So it's definitely something to watch, and definitely something that Clemson's got to be creative with, right? Because we all know that Clemson ain't going to go out there and outbid a Texas or a Tennessee or an Ohio State, or name whoever you want to name that has much bigger Texas A&M, much bigger coffers than Clemson. So they got to be competitive, but be creative in other ways to draw these guys to Clemson. And we'll see if it works with Atkinson.
Yep.
New King says, do you think Clemson will finish with the top recruiting class in the ACC this year?
The top recruiting class in the ACC?
Top recruiting class.
It's possible. I think if you hit on the guys that are remaining on the board, and at a really good rate, I mean, you land a Keshawn Stancil, and Dre Quinn and Tyler Atkinson and Bryce Perry-White and Blake Stewart. Like, if you land all those guys, I don't think you will. I don't think you're going you're batting 100 there, or batting 1,000. But I do think that is within the cards, but it really depends on how many kids they take, how many kids that do other programs take. I mean, in Miami's case, like, they have a lot of big fish that are still out there on the board. So, how well do they do in terms of landing some of those guys? Some of those kids they're going head to head for Clemson with Clemson for like a Blake Stewart and a Jay Lamar. So, like, if that could swing both programs one way or the other, based off of those decisions. Miami's also, they're also in it for Bryce Perry-White too. I do think they're probably running third at best, but they are in the conversation. So, I think that's Clemson's chief competition as far as top class in the ACC. I don't think Florida State is going to have the quality of guys overall to be in that conversation. I do think it'd be a Clemson or Miami type thing, but I think it's possible. But I think it ultimately depends on do you win those head-to-head battles with Miami, and do they land some of the bigger guys on their board too. So it is pretty fluid, and we're still in June, so it's hard to say.
Jay says usually Clemson sends out another offer before these announcements once they feel they've lost a guy.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, yeah, it happens a lot of the time. Sometimes, like there's situations where they like a guy and they want to offer them, but there's one thing that there's a requirement they haven't satisfied. Whether it's I don't know whether it's academic, whether it's just getting on campus, because you don't if you haven't come to campus on an unofficial visit of any kind, whether it was a camp or just coming on your own dime and seeing the campus, you're not going to get an offer.
Right.
It's a requirement to come to campus at least once, but before Clemson extends an offer. So it varies from player to player. If it's a guy that's been on campus and has camped and they're very familiar with, you'll typically see an offer go out kind of around the time, but it's not always the case. It just kind of depends on the player and and just the situation. So, but yeah.
Isaac Smith says, I thought I saw a Clemson insider put a prediction in for Quinn to Texas, but I could be wrong.
You might. I don't. I haven't checked
24/7
sport. I haven't checked 24/7 sports. Since I saw a crystal ball come in for Texas, but I don't think it was a Clemson, and I think it was a Texas insider that put it in. The last one I saw. I don't know. I know Austin Hannon. I think he's the publisher right now for Clemson 24/7. He put in a crystal ball for Clemson before that. I don't think unless he's changed it. So I don't know. I haven't seen any Clemson writers, put it in a crystal ball for Clemson or put a crystal ball in or a prediction in for Texas. But I haven't checked since like a day or two ago, so it might be different now.
Yeah, I'm trying to check right now. Jay says, I kind of like the recruits not giving away their hand in these recruitments. Just not when my school is involved. I think we can.
I agree. I mean, that's how it used to be, man. Like, I mean, this is like these are the old school recruitments in a way, where you just you see a guy's committed and you have no idea who he's going to pick because just the access to recruiting info and all of that and the expanse of it now has made it so it's really hard to keep that all under wraps all the time. Some players are good at it, that they're very deliberate about who they give information to, who they tell things and what they say to the media. But sometimes it just, it's a very much a game now in order to keep that under wraps without somebody getting an inkling about where you're going to go. So, this is one of those situations where they kept things close to the vest and both schools feel like they are in good position. So, that's an old school recruitment, kind of like the CJ Spiller recruitment way back in the day was like that. Florida felt really good about landing CJ Spiller, but Clemson, they felt just as good, and he ended up picking Clemson. Mike Williams was like that. He was almost a Gamecock, and he decided basically the day of he was going to pick Clemson.
I bet you they wish they would have had him because the stuff he did to them was man.
It's I mean that's like I think some people think that recruiting and these decisions are always like, okay, they make the decision and that they just hold on to it till the announcement day. Sometimes it's the day of. Sometimes on a whim they just
sometimes they're waking up that morning being like, man, where am I gonna go?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it. Think about your mindset when you were, about to graduate high school, like making that big of a decision. It's not easy, man. So you can't fault these kids who are just, don't really know which way to go because you go from school to school and everything sounds great, right? So trying to decipher that, you got to have a good support system around you to kind of, weed through all the fluff that schools throw at you, and figure out what's real and what's important to you. And that's not always easy, especially when you're a 17, 18-year-old kid.
Oh yeah, it's a tough decision. I don't, I don't feel sorry for them, especially not.
No, it's a privilege. It's a privilege.
Yeah, it's a very big opportunity, but
Yeah.
it's also, it's also nerve-wracking, and
Right.
and it's a very arduous process.
Yeah.
It's
The weight of the decision is not lost on me.
yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, I don't feel sorry for them because there's a million kids that would want to trade places with them to make that difficult decision. So it's very much a privilege, but there is a weight that comes with making those kind of decisions. I looked up 247 as far as Dre Quinn goes right now as it sits. There's one crystal ball out for Clemson and one for Texas. The one for Clemson is from a Clemson insider, Austin Hannon, and the one for Texas is from a Texas insider, Hank South.
Yeah.
So,
that's
we're 50-50 right now as far as the crystal balls go, according to 247. So
yeah, that's where it was last time I looked. So I think On3 had a guy put in a prediction, but I think that was also a Texas insider. You never know. I mean, like I said, with Corey and Gibson, like I will say there was one guy, Mike Roach, for Texas 24/7 that even when all the smoke was coming in for Texas leading up to his commitment, was like, I still think it's Clemson, and he was right. So sometimes some of these guys have better sources than others. It's not you got to be able to parse through it sometimes. And some guys just and it also depends on the area too, because some and their connections to the particular school that they're at. Because sometimes that if you know the coach, like you can get you're more familiar, or you have a better relationship with, that area, you might have a better understanding of where that player is going to go. So, it's always when these expert predictions come in, you always gotta see where they're coming from first and foremost. Like, okay, do they have well-sourced information?
Yeah.
Or do I have reason to believe that they're well-sourced on this particular player? And so that ultimately determines what ends up happening. And we're talking about a Clemson guy putting in a crystal ball for Clemson and a Texas guy putting in a crystal ball for Texas. It'd be different if, say a Georgia insider who maybe is familiar with covering Buford High School, comes in and puts in a prediction for Texas, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I might need to. Yeah.
What does he know?
Yeah. What does he know?
Yeah.
So sometimes that's a thing too. You'll have guys that are affiliated with neither program, and maybe they cover a completely different program that come in and put a crystal ball. I've seen that a good bit, especially on 24/7 Sports. So, but that's I could do a whole thing about crystal balls and what how I feel about them, but that's where things are.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the crystal balls are when you boil it down to everything, it's a guess. Yeah, they have sources. Yeah, they have information, but they're only going off of what they've been told, and the validity of that information can vary based on the situation. So at the end of the day, it's all just guesses, whether it's an extremely educated guess or not. It's just a guess. So Intelligent Savage says, running back Jay Lamar, what's it looking like? And does he have an announcement date?
Yeah. I don't have that off the top of my head. I think he set an announcement date. I really should write this down so I have it in front of me. But we're kind of running on fumes right now today. But like I said, I do think Jay Lamar is a guy that I think it's, like I said, it's going to come down to Clemson it's going to come down to Clemson, Miami, or Georgia. And all three programs have felt good at different points in his recruitment. I'm skeptical. But I'm cautiously optimistic about Clemson's chances in that one.
All right, we'll take a couple more here, and then we're going to move on. What time is Quinn's recruitment tomorrow?
I guess his commitment.
Yeah.
I believe it's at noon. I want to say
noon.
You can fact check me on that.
All right, our channel member, David, thank you for being a channel member and contributing to the channel in that way. We appreciate you. He said, Miami is right in the middle of the largest talent pool in the country. That's absolutely true. They do have an advantage there with the amount of players they have.
Dylan thank you, Dylan. June 25th for Jay Lamar. That sounds right. Miami, Miami certainly has every advantage in the world as far as the recruiting is concerned. Situated in South Florida, and they can walk down the block and there's a 4-star receiver or a 5-star corner like that. They just it's a blessing to be in that kind of situation, and they're always going to recruit well. Mario Cristobal is a phenomenal recruiter. He has got phenomenal recruiters on staff. So, that's one thing you always have to keep in mind. So, Miami might have the best class in the league this year. I don't think for Clemson, I don't really concern myself on whether or not they end up with a higher ranked class than Miami, because the two programs recruit differently, numbers wise, type of kid, what positions they emphasize. I'm not too worried about it. So while Clemson may not end up with the best class in the league, I like their chances at retaining and developing their talent better than Miami right now. I think the results have borne that out. And maybe that changes, but for now, as long as Clemson gets the guys, their share of the guys that they want, and they continue to develop like they do, I'm not too worried about what Miami is doing. They're always going to recruit well. So,
absolutely. It's kind of impossible to be the University of Miami, be located where you are, and recruit badly. Yeah. If you can't recruit well at a place like Miami, you probably should find a different profession. So, but yeah, I'm not worried about Clemson at all. I don't think Clemson will ever be a school that is constantly a top 5 recruiting school. They never have been, and I don't think they ever will be. Which, to that point, I don't think we need to be. Like we've had all of our success hovering around, the 8 to 12 range as far as recruiting class, if you will, for the majority of the time under Dabo Swinney. And so far, that's gotten us 2 national championships, a ton of ACC titles, and all the success that we've had. So as long as we maintain somewhere around there, we're competitive and we pluck some of these big guys here and there and continue with the roster retention, it'll be just fine. We'll be just fine. All right, come on. Christian says, I almost went to South Carolina. Man, did you dodge a bullet there, dude?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I'd go out volunteering that information. All right. I think we will leave recruiting there, Jordan. Lot to pay attention to if you're a Clemson fan. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, obviously, with Dre Quinn. It'll either be a really exciting day or disappointing. And then we'll see where Clemson pivots from there But obviously, if that doesn't go our way, you still got White on the board as far as the defensive side of the ball goes, and we'll see where that goes and how Clemson adjusts fire based on those. But I'm still pretty hopeful, and we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, make sure you're checking out the Voice of College Football official website. Yes, that's correct. You heard me correctly. The Voice of College Football has our very own website. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you guys can see it. If you guys do not know about it yet, go over there and make an account. Go check it out. There's articles written over there. You see our live schedule on the left side of the screen that constantly keeps you up to date on all things Voice of College Football, all the various lives, all the various team channels. You got, different forums on there about your team, about other people's teams. And as I mentioned, the articles written there about various topics and things going on in the world of college football and in the world of the Voice of College Football. So if you guys would do us a favor, go check it out. The Voice of College Football official website. Go check it out, make an account, and we would appreciate your support in that way. All right, moving right along, Jordan, in the show tonight, we are going to talk about some of these breakout freshmen, if you will, or these freshmen that contributed a lot to the Clemson football team last year. There was a lot of names there that kind of helped Clemson in some pretty big ways last year. Now they're turning, the page to their sophomore season. And we're going to talk about a couple of these guys tonight, Jordan, and give kind of some projections on what their sophomore campaign may look like. As you know, sophomore campaigns are kind of one of those things that go either way, right? When you're looking at it in sports, specifically football, a lot of times you'll have these guys have breakout freshman seasons and they hit, what we like to call as a sophomore slump, right? Or where they battle injury, or, maybe they start feeling themselves a little too much from the success that they had as a freshman. And they don't quite get the production that you would expect building on from what they did as a freshman in their sophomore campaign. So, Jordan, let's talk about some of these bigger names on Clemson's roster that had amazing freshman seasons and where we see them what level we see them producing at for the 2025 Clemson football season and their sophomore campaign.
Yeah, this is a group that is going to tell us a lot about, when you look at the names on this list, and it's going to tell us a lot about what this team ends up accomplishing this year. I mean, this is last year's freshman class. I mean, you had several guys come in and step up in big time roles, especially towards the back half of the season. And this is a group that's going to comprise quite a number of your big time contributors this year. I guess we can start on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, I think the two obvious names that are going into their sophomore years are wide receivers Bryant Wesco Jr. and TJ Moore. I think the expectations are going to be extremely high for them. Both borderline 5-star recruits, and they were second and fourth, I believe, in amongst true freshmen in receiving yards last year. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to kind of build on that. And one of those things is this is a game that has a limited number of plays, a limited number of snaps, a limited number of available touches. So obviously statistically, you wonder kind of what does their sophomore year look like? Because there'll be some things different. I mean, they have the same quarterback, but obviously the running game is going to be different. Obviously different running back. One thing I guess that works in their favor is a guy like Jake Brinkstool being gone, and who ate up a lot of receptions. He had 49 catches last year. So how are those touches distributed? Right. And then you got to consider you have veterans like Tyler Brown coming back, who was injured last season. And, you bring in Tristan Smith from the transfer portal, who has brought more to this room than I think even the coaching staff expected. It seems. So, that's one of the things that you have to wonder, because like I said, there's only so many snaps and so many touches that can go around. So, obviously the more than the statistics, it's about, how do they improve as football players?
Right.
It's, Bryant Wesco is a guy that came in pretty ready to go from a technical standpoint. Obviously, the athleticism, the speed. He's one of arguably the fastest player on offense. And that big playability, shined pretty early when he got the chance. And I think down the stretch when he got hurt, that kind of hampered kind of his end production. But I think the sky's the limit for him. But one of the things that we talked about and was a theme throughout the year and even before the season was his size. He was very, very thin coming in. I think he was only I think he weighed in as an early enrollee. I think he was like 160 something, 160 pounds, something like that. Reports have been that he's got up to 185. He's stronger. He's faster. So what does he look like in year two? I don't know. What do you think? Because I think you couple his speed and his big playability, but now if he's a guy that also has some physicality and some meat on the bones, and he's stronger at the catch. He can be stronger at the catch point. He's going to be tougher to get hands on out of his release. Like who's guarding that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the, you just touched on it there. And I think that's the biggest avenue that if you're a Clemson fan and you're looking for, hey, Bryant Wesco was amazing last year. Where is his biggest potential to growth? You just hit on it right there. The physicality, right? The ability to get hands off of them and not be pressed at the line of scrimmage and get caught up, right? And then throws off the entire timing of your route. And you're no longer an option for the quarterback because you can't get free, right? You're not physical enough because you don't have that body mass yet, that muscle, that strength to kind of get off of those hard presses that some of those DBs did to Brian Wesco last year that kind of limited a little bit of what he did. And, no disrespect to him. He obviously had an amazing season, but that's certainly where he can grow the most. Being more physical at the point of attack with the football, doing those crossers across the middle, getting free off of press coverage and not letting it alter his route in any way. That's the biggest avenue, I think, for Brian Wesco to grow from a wide receiver standpoint this year, right? We already know that he is a really good route runner, right? We already know his breakaway speed and the ability to take the top off the defense. That's already been proven from literally game 2 on, right? Last year, he proved the ability to take the top off the defense. But that physicality, right? Building that muscle, building that more slender frame out a little bit more. And I think he's probably focused his attention on that this offseason. And I'm excited to see where he's at from that standpoint. How much has he grown from a physicality standpoint? Because if he puts that together, to your point, who is guarding that? His big playability goes through the roof because now you can't press him anymore because he can get off of it. And then if he does have that physicality and that ability to get off of press man coverage, right? Once he gets off of it, that dude's not catching back up to him. It's over, right? All Cade's got to do is drop it in the basket, and he's banging his head off the goalpost. So really exciting to think about what could be for a player like Brian Wesco in year 2 in this Garrett Riley system.
Yeah, 100%. And he's only going to continue to get better and more refined as his career progresses. I think he kind of in a weird way, as good as he was last year, I still feel like he's being undervalued maybe by some in the fan base. I think maybe because the excitement that TJ Moore brought towards the back half of the year, but I think that Bryant Wesco absolutely could potentially, take another a even bigger step in year two, just being bigger and potentially it gotten even faster, which would be crazy to say. But like you said, I mean, and it's not even just the physicality getting off press; it's being stronger at the catch point.
Yep.
On especially on his shorter routes.
Mm-hmm.
Catching a slant or
Yep.
a curl or a dig across the middle,
Yep.
and being able to finish the catch through contact.
Absolutely.
Like he's got really, really good hands, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely helps to be bigger and being able to take some of those harder hits better, and it only makes you better as a receiver. So yeah, I mean I'm really excited about what Bryant Wesco can bring to the table in year two, because I mean his athleticism, his big play ability could mean Clemson is a very, very scary team vertically this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be terrifying. And talking about his counterpart over there, TJ Moore. Where do you kind of see where do you kind of see the biggest jump that he could have over this summer, Jordan? As far as obviously you talk about the huge breakout that Brian Wesco had towards the beginning of the season, and then TJ Moore towards the end just kind of took over. I mean, and he really started to come into his own, but it was a bit of a slower process for him than it was for Brian Wesco, right? Brian Wesco he came out the gates and made his presence known very early on. And you saw TJ Moore, as it went on, he just kind of got better and better and better and better. And you listen to some of the commentary that Dabo had for him, and he talked about some of the bad habits that he had from high school. Just playing against guys that were just inferior competition to him, right? And some of the bad habits that had him playing with at times. And obviously, he got better as the season went. But where can you see his biggest growth from his freshman campaign to his sophomore campaign, as far as being a playmaker for this Clemson offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it, and that's something that Dabo talked about. And just he's a bigger bodied kid. He's got great athleticism. He's got great hands. He's just very natural at the position. It's just about being more refined on some of the little things. I think it's when you're a kid with his talent and he's done it the way he's done it. You kind of slip into those bad habits. So I do think just being more refined in his routes, certainly, especially his shorter routes, because I think he's got good. I think he actually is a good route runner. But there are always things that he can be better at. And when it comes to when he's not going running a post or something, like some of the more technically advanced and technically intricate routes, whether it's like a whip or I don't know, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I want to see from him is just being more detail oriented. And I think if he is his understanding of the offense, certainly it got better and better, and his feel for space, like all of those things, I think are things that if he's better at in 2025, that obviously the sky's the limit for him. And I definitely see a first round talent in the future.
Oh yeah. I mean,
when you watch him,
he's definitely one of those guys that as you expect him to continue to become more polished as a route runner and doing the little things and getting the various nuances of the game, you expect that guy to most certainly grow into a unanimous first round draft pick. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I think it would be more surprising if he didn't kind of leave Clemson as grown into that kind of player.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's give some of the defense a little bit of love, Jordan. Obviously, you think about freshmen on the defensive side of the ball that kind of had massive contributions, and you think of Ashton Hampton, obviously, and then obviously you think of Sammy Brown as well. Those are kind of the two marquee names that kind of jump out in your mind as far as kind of your breakout freshmen from last year that really contributed in a big way. And let's talk about Ashton Hampton first and foremost. I mean, the sheer size of this guy on the field is crazy. And his athleticism paired with the size and length that he has in his arms is, I mean, it can become a deadly combination. Like I think the sky is the limit for Ashton Hampton as far as a defensive back at Clemson. I cannot wait to see what he truly becomes, because I think we saw flashes of it last year, maybe not as consistent, obviously being a freshman, still learning things at the position, still learning the nuances of the defense. And obviously he's got a whole new defense to learn this year. So there is an element of that on the defensive side of the ball for those guys that the offensive side doesn't have. But I can't be more excited about Ashton Hampton and what I think his abilities and what he will eventually become at Clemson. What are your thoughts on Ashton Hampton and kind of where he goes from his freshman campaign jumping into his sophomore campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. I mean, the talent and ability that he displayed last year, I think it surprised, a lot of people, because, he was kind of, especially I remember when he committed, it didn't make a ton of noise. But, you got him out of Tallahassee, being
right.
His dad being a former Florida State coach, but it didn't generate a ton of buzz nationally. But I think when he got on campus, it was very apparent. Oh, this kid is going to be something. I mean, he was just physically ready, more ready than most freshmen. And, couple that with, he was able to work his way into the rotation very early on and eventually becoming a starter, especially with the way Shelton Lewis was dealing with injuries and Jaden Lucas at times. And it made sense. But what's really exciting about him is that, I mean, you feel like he can do anything for this defense. I mean, I think you could play him at corner, boundary or field. I think you could play him at safety. I think you could play him at nickel. I think you might see him at nickel a good bit this year with guys like Jaden Lucas and Shelton Lewis coming back into the rotation. There's a lot of he just brings a lot of positional versatility that I think is a luxury to have on the defense. And I think, Tom Allen is going to be really excited to see what he can do. I mean, I love watching him at corner. So, I wouldn't be upset if they just say, man, we're just going to leave you out there until it doesn't work. But I do think that he does bring a level of flexibility that is rare in college football and is really a luxury to have. So, that's exciting as well. And I'm excited to see kind of where Tom Allen fits him into this defense. And because I think he can play anywhere and be successful, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, sky's the limit. You mentioned his position versatility, which just makes him an even bigger weapon for Clemson and the coaching staff and the various ways that they can use him on the field. And that's what makes him so unique is that size that he has coupled with his athleticism. So, again, really excited about him. I think his projection for his sophomore campaign is really high. I think he is going to be one of the best defensive backs Clemson has in 2025. And we need him to be to get where we're going. So, and then obviously looking at linebacker, Sammy Brown, obviously, last year had an early injury in the linebacker room, and he probably had to step into a little bit bigger of a role than they probably initially had for him heading into the season. You remember Colby McLeod goes down with the torn ACL. He was looking at some playing time last year, and obviously Sammy Brown comes in and fills in nicely. I remember time and time again, Jordan, us going on the post-game live video, and somehow Sammy Brown not playing all 4 quarters, but somehow consistently leading the defense in tackles time and time again. He's just a guy that finds the ball. He's a football player. He's a guy that puts himself in the right positions. And, you know, just kind of a baller out there. He's a really good linebacker. Obviously had some freshman mistakes. He had some growing pains, obviously. But again, he put a really solid freshman campaign on, and much like Ashton Hampton, I expect him to grow immensely from year 1 to year 2, especially with the addition of a coach like Tom Allen coming on. And then you got the intensity of a young coach in Ben Boulware. I think there will be a renewed kind of focus on, I don't know, that dog mentality of the linebacker group that we used to, you know, that we've come to know as Clemson linebackers. You know, we haven't always had the best linebacking core out there or the most athletic linebackers out there, but we've had dogs out there at linebacker year in and year out, and I think you're going to see a return of that. Sammy Brown is going to be a key cog in the wheel for this retooled Tom Allen defense, and I'm excited to see how he improves from year 1 to year 2. Your thoughts on Sammy Brown?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'm excited to see, because, you know, it felt like at times you know, when you watch Sammy Brown, you just saw an athlete going out there and making plays. But you know, now like under Ben Boulware's tutelage and in a Tom Allen defense, where I feel like there's, like you said, there's going to be a renewed energy. I'm just excited to see, like, just as he gets more detail oriented as far as like the intricacies of playing linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's only going to be just an even better football player. So, you know, Sammy is a kid that, you know, you're never going to have to worry about him, you know, bringing it every weekend. So, you know, and this is, you know, with Barrett Carter gone and obviously Wade, it's him and Wade Woodaz, like those are the guys right now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think he's going to see as the opportunity and be pretty phenomenal this year. So excited to watch him play.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be super exciting to see where he's at. Intelligent Savage says, speaking of sophomores, running back Jay Haynes, wonder how his recovery, how he's recovering, and when we can expect him back.
Yeah, Jay Haynes, I guess he's technically a third-year player, but a redshirt sophomore. But yeah, you know, I think his recovery has gone well. I believe Dabo expects him back by preseason. You know, I say preseason, but sometime during fall camp, maybe leading up to the game, they feel like he might be ready to go. So I think that's good news. Like I said, I think his recovery is going well, and you know, I think you're going to need him, because I mean, he really did show some flashes when he was healthy this past year, and I hated to see his season end the way it did. So yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm going to be watching is like, when he does come back, how is he going to get worked back in with?
Yeah,
Adam Randall presumably as of now being RB1, and you've got Gideon Davidson coming in, and I think David Eziamume had a really good spring and took a lot of strides. So, you know, there's going to be some muddiness in terms of that running back room, and especially as far as like the way the depth chart shakes out.
Yeah, very much. And who's going to emerge during fall camp, I think is going to, that's where we'll get a lot of those answers on how that running back room is going to stack up, you know, as we enter the 2025 campaign. So, you know, those guys are going to have to earn their playing time. I think Adam Randall will probably be a key in that room. and we'll see how it all shakes out. You mentioned the two young guys and Easy E and Gideon Davison. So there's a lot of question marks still at running back, and I think we may get some answers as we get into fall camp and closer to the season as far as how all that's going to pan out. Another guy coming off an injury that's being mentioned in the comments, Elijah Thurman. Once he's healthy, obviously he had that. He was having a great start for Clemson, and he was out there filling in for an injured Tristan Lay. Yeah. Or Tristan Lee, excuse me.
Yeah.
And then went down with that knee injury. So we'll see how quickly he can shake back. But he was a guy that definitely looked like he can be a contributor on that offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. He came in ready to go, ready to play. He's a guy that I think is going to offer a lot of positional versatility. You saw him go out there and play. I mean, he was recruited as an interior guy, but he could play tackle, and he played tackle very well when he was able to when he was healthy. And so I think he's gonna offer some depth. I mean, I think the question of who's going to kind of slot in at left guard is still kind of a question, but. I do think Elijah Thurman is a guy that when you're in a pinch or somebody goes down, I think he can slot in basically anywhere and give you quality, quality snaps. So just hopefully his recovery is going well. From everything that I've read, it is. But when he's expected to be back, obviously his timeline is obviously it's going to be earlier than Jay Haynes because he got injured during the regular season, and Jay Haynes was the ACC championship. So it's about just the good thing with him is there won't be a ton of pressure to kind of get back in because I think your starting lineup is going to be more or less set. At offensive line, ball running back, kind of the pecking order is still kind of up in the air there.
Absolutely. Dylan Spell said, I heard Darian Mayo was a problem during drills. I want to say it was from the Two Right Turns podcast. I'm excited to see him on the field as well. Yeah, that's another sophomore that could be maybe a guy that, a lot of people aren't talking about heading into the season as far as breakout guys as we look at more of the sophomores that had great freshman campaigns, a guy and Darian Mayo who, was limited in his first year at Clemson, but looks to grow into a much bigger role in his sophomore campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the potential is really up there for him. Coming out of high school, I really love, like, obviously his frame is what really attracted a lot of people, and his athleticism. He's like 6'7", being that big and moving the way he does. But I think he needed to spend some time in the weight room, and I think that's one thing that I think they've emphasized, and I think he's gotten stronger, he's gotten twitchier, and that's going to be something that is going to be able to get him on the field more and get him some more opportunities in year two. So I'm excited to see what opportunities he gets.
Absolutely, I am as well. All right, to wrap it up here on our sophomore projections, Jordan, anybody that you want to mention, maybe guys that aren't on the radar right now, but are going into their sophomore campaigns that you could see having a significant impact on the Clemson Tigers in 2025?
Yeah, another name is Ricardo Jones at safety. Obviously, he had some limited opportunities in year one, but really flashed with the opportunities he did get. I know he had an interception. He had some tackles, some pass breakups, and some limited time and some spot duty. I'm excited for him. I mean, I loved him as a recruit, and obviously with the departure of R.J. Mickens, obviously that means there's a opportunity for more snaps in 2025. So I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely one to watch out for. All right, we'll go ahead and leave our sophomore projections there. We got one more topic to get to, and then get to the comment section a little bit. But we've been doing it throughout the show tonight. We will be right back after a word from our very own Mark Rogers.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
All right, you heard Mark there. Go check out the Amazon link. It's in all the descriptions of the videos that we do here on the channel. It doesn't change how you check out. It doesn't change anything. But if you're shopping on Amazon, if you would, just copy that link over to your order, and it helps out the channel in a big way. So appreciate your help with that, guys. We got 39 people in the live chat right now. Thank you so much for being here, guys. If I didn't mention before, hit that like button. It really helps us out on these live videos, helps it project out to more people. So if you guys can get as close to that 40 likes as possible in this live, that would be greatly appreciated. And consider subscribing. Me and Jordan do the All In Show right here every week. So consider subscribing and coming to hang out with us. We do more content during the season, obviously, than we do in the off season, but we do a weekly show throughout the off season as well. So consider sticking around with us. You don't have to be a Clemson fan. We enjoy chopping it up with all sorts of fan bases here. So come hang out with us permanently. All right, Jordan, as we get closer and closer to fall camp, and as we start thinking about what this Clemson Tiger team can be in 2025, I think one of the questions that are on a lot of Clemson fans' minds is, what is year 3 under Garrett Riley's offensive system going to look like? What will the evolution of the offense be in year 3? If you go all the way back to year 1, we hired Garrett Riley. It was an exciting time, and we were really excited about having, just kind of a completely fresh philosophy on offensive football when it came to the Clemson Tigers, because we had ran the same system for about a decade at that point. And Garrett Riley came in and kind of injected a new philosophy, a new way of going about things. And in year 1, it was pretty disappointing, to be completely honest. It did not go at all like we thought it would. The offense did not hit the ground running in any way. We kind of reverted back to some of our old schemes as that first season went on under Garrett Riley, due to, roster limitation and just guys not being able to do what he was asking them to do. And he was very honest with the media about that. And then you roll into year 2 last year, and Cade Klubnik made a complete transformation in the offseason. He comes in and is absolutely lighting it on fire, both through the air and using its legs at times to kind of supplement that offense. So now here we are after a huge transformation, kind of when you look at last season. Now we're going into year 3 under Garrett Riley, and the receiving core looks a whole lot better than it did in year 1. And you're getting guys like Tyler Brown back that were injured all of last year. You got TJ Moore, you got Brian Wesco, guys we've already talked about tonight. Not to forget about Antonio Williams, right? The leading receiver from last year's team. So you got a lot of weapons there. You got a retooled offensive line that got so much better throughout the season last year under a Matt Luke. You expect them to take another jump this year, having 4 of the 5 starters coming back for this season. So how do you see the offensive evolution for Clemson in year 3 under Garrett Riley? What do you see tweaks or changes that he might make, more emphasis on various formation types, play types? What do you see the evolution of Clemson offense in year 3?
Yeah, that's one of the big questions for me because as exciting as this offense is, I mean there are changes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Obviously the departure of Jake Brenningstool, one of your
Right.
all-time leaders in receiving yards at tight end, or in receptions at tight end. I think that's different. He was third on the team in total receptions. Like so, there's a lot that you have to keep in mind there, and obviously the departure of Phil Mafah at running back.
Yep.
So there's some change there on offense, and so that's going to kind of dictate you know what plays you're going to run. The splits as far as run versus pass, formationally. What do you want to do? Um, there's a lot. Obviously with Jake Brenningstool being gone, like I mentioned, the heir apparent is Olsen Pat Henry, who I think is probably a very underrated receiver, but certainly made his playing time last year as being a phenomenal blocker. So what does that mean for will we see Clemson do more heavy sets?
Mm.
But and then when you think about the kind of the question we have at running back, what does that mean for like this passing game? Are we going to see with Adam Randall presumably being the running back one? Do
Yep.
you see some 10 personnel or 11 personnel, but Adam Randall's out there split out wide
Mm-hmm.
because he's obviously a receiver that's playing running back, and there's some creative things you could probably do there. Um, Obviously the return of the offensive line means what jump do they make in year two under Matt Luke? Are they going to be able to be more physical in the run game? I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think we needed to see more of from them last year. That it just obviously Phil Mafah being injured didn't help, but getting more push up front. I think they made strides last year, but I think they could be even better in year two. So you consider all those things, and obviously what step what does Cade Klubnik make? That's another question. So I could see a number of different ways that this offense looks. I think you're going to see more varied, some more variety formationally. Obviously, personnel groupings are going to be really key because I think you have a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. So you could see some a couple of plays where they just go five wide with the talent they have at receiver. Are they going to? Then I could totally see some 12 personnel, some 21 personnel, and get creative in the run game. Obviously, I think the main thing will be the main thing. They'll still run a lot of gap scheme stuff, a lot of counter. And I think Cade's legs are certainly going to be a factor, continue to be a factor in the run game. But as far as tendencies and what plays they run, I think that's going to be different because you have it's just a different group of personnel, even though some of the same guys are back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned all of those players coming back to the offense this year, and that's kind of the important piece and why we think this offense is going to be so good in 2025. But some of the other question marks that you mentioned specifically at the running back position, I think that dictates a lot of what Garrett Riley is going to be able to do, especially early on this season, kind of figuring out where that running back room is. You mentioned Adam Randall, and I think he's going to be serviceable, but you don't have that RB1, verified, guy that you've seen produce on the field, right? We don't have that this year. You got a lot of guys that have the potential to become really good at the position. Adam Randall may end up being a great running back, but we just don't know at this point, right? Gideon Davison, we think is going to be really good at Clemson. Easy E, we think is going to be a good running back at Clemson as well, but that is definitely going to dictate some of the things that Garrett Riley's going to do. And I think specifically early on in the season, that's going to be a big question mark for me, just kind of seeing how this running game is utilized and the different ways that they try to do that. You mentioned the loss of Jake Brenningstool. I think that's a bigger loss than people think it is. Obviously, I think he had 15% of the receptions for Clemson last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he was a big piece of the offense. And he was a big body guy and a matchup nightmare for defenses at times. And, replacing him, although we got a lot of talent at the tight end position and we feel really good where we are as far as the tight end room, again, it's still unproven production. It's still unproven players as far as producing for the Clemson offense on the field, much like running back. So I think those are the two big keys when you're looking at position groups and how it's going to dictate, tendencies and packages that you talked about, 10 personnel, 11 personnel, all those kind of things, and what Garrett Riley's going to be able to do. And I think some of those are going to have to be answered in that kind of first month of the season to see how those particular two rooms step up and what they're able to do as far as from a production standpoint on the offensive side of the ball. But when you got a guy like Cade Klubnik returning, you expect for him to, take another step in his progression. He's taking his wide receivers out to California and working with Jordan Palmer out there. And, they've done all the things in the offseason that you want to see from a fan standpoint to be like, they're building chemistry and this is going to be a really good team. But, as good as we think they are, there are some question marks on this offensive side of the football. But I think Garrett Riley's obviously up for the task, and it's going to be fun to watch the evolution of this offense, not only heading into the season, but how they evolve as the season goes on, as we mentioned, those two big question mark position groups, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's going to be one of those things that I'm going to be watching, and because not only are you losing personnel and guys are taking on different roles, you have guys that are coming back, and you have some new faces. So we already talked about what Tyler Brown was in 2023 and what he could potentially bring as fully healthy in 2025 . The addition of Tristan Smith, it also, muddies the waters a little bit. You still have Cole Turner, who I think is being undervalued by a lot of the fan base. I'm a Cole Turner guy. I'll just say it. I like Cole Turner. I think he gets a lot of flack, I think, from some in the fan base. Don't know why. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's arguably the fastest player on offense. He made some big plays last year. I think the criticism of Dabo, kind of having, some favoritism towards the older guys and Adam Randall and Cole Turner early in the year, especially in that Georgia game. Yes. I think that rubbed people the wrong way. But Cole Turner came up big in some big moments last year. I mean, that touchdown he had against Stanford broke that game open. He had a big touchdown catch against Virginia Tech. That was Clemson's first score of the game and kind of it tied the game and got them going. And they ended up pulling out that one. He had some big time gadget plays. He had a reverse for a touchdown. The Cole Turner offers a lot to this offense, and I think he's a guy that I don't think we've talked about enough this offseason. But you have to think, when he came into Clemson, he hadn't been playing football all that long, and he hadn't been playing receiver all that long, and so. I think he's still. I think people forget he's still growing as a receiver too, and I thought he made some significant jumps over the course of the year, and I think he can offer some big plays in 2025 too. So I think this is it kind of goes to show kind of how complete this wide receiver room is. I mean, just with the diversity of body type and skill set that you have. So.
It's going to be a chore for Garrett Riley to figure out who's going to get the ball. I mean, you mentioned Cole Turner, and he's obviously received some criticism. But to your point, this is a guy that has big playability, right? He can take the top off of a defense as well. He's a very fast wide receiver and a guy that can do some damage out in space as well. So, when you think about the addition of him and Tyler Brown, who were Tyler Brown was hurt pretty much all of last season. Cole Turner was banged up for a lot of last season. And you throw those two guys in the mix with a Tristan Smith that you brought in via the transfer portal. Oh, and not to mention you got Antonio Williams and Brian Wesco and TJ Moore. The weapons out there are kind of endless. And it's a good thing because you can roll those guys in and out. You can preserve, the stamina of some of those guys, and you can throw a bunch of different looks at defenses. And I think, although it's going to be a challenge probably to figure out the rotation maybe and who's getting the ball, and obviously there's only one football for each play. It's a good problem to have when you have a wide receiver room that's that deep, especially when you think about this is football, and inevitably there are going to be injuries. Although we hate them, we don't like seeing anybody get injured, not only for Clemson, but any team. I don't like to see any guy go down with injury. It's going to happen. So having that amazing depth that we just kind of went through on that wide receiver core is going to be a big point of emphasis for this offense in 2025. And you're going to have a lot of different options to go to, and that's going to be a good thing for Cade. And I expect the offensive line to take another jump as well. I'm excited to see, another year under Matt Luke, year 2. It's crazy to think that he's only been here for 1 year, I guess fully 1 year now. When you think about all the contributions that he's made via the recruiting trail, and then just the transformation that the offensive line went through last year. We went into last year talking about the offensive line like, we think they'll get better under Matt Luke, but, how much better are they going to get in this short amount of time? And that was answered in a resounding they got a whole lot better in year 1. And he's got 4 of his 5 starters back this year. So you would expect that Cade's going to, have some clean pockets that he can operate in. And when you think about that edge position and all those wide receivers and weapons, it's a good recipe for a very explosive offense in 2025.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, make sure you're checking out the Voice of College Football on all of our social media sites. Obviously, we have we have an official X page over there. Go check us out over there. The Voice of College Football network over on X for the best debate, discussion, and analysis with no off season. Post a lot of college football content over there. Post a lot of always post the schedule updates for the shows, so when and where all of our live streams are happening, not only on the Clemson channel, but all the various channels throughout the Voice of College Football network. And then also we have a Instagram page. So if you guys are over on Instagram, I encourage you to go over, check out the Instagram page, give us a follow over there as well. Voice of College Football over on Instagram. Grow the following over there, and that would be a great help as well. It's the VOCFB over on Instagram. All right, and then last but certainly not least, me and Jordan are obviously on X as well. Go give Jordan a follow, Jobo0209. Great follow over there on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it. I encourage you to go over there and follow Jordan. Give myself a follow as well, TPC underscore, CFB over on X. Appreciate your guys' help with that as well. And with that said, we can go ahead and transition to a few comments here before we get out of here for the night, Jordan. We're not going to stay too much longer. It's already 11 o'clock, guys. So a couple questions, couple comments, and then we'll get out of here for the night. Again, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for being here for the All-In Show. Got 47 people in the live chat. Hit that like button. Helps us out on the live videos, like I already said before. And consider subscribing. We're on the road to 6,000 subscribers. So help us get there, and we appreciate your help with that. All right, let's see what you guys are talking about in the comment section. I start a couple. Let's see. Wet Sox says, I hope Ashton Hampton can take a jump. That would be a corner duo I'd take against any wide receiver room. Yeah, I completely agree. Him and Avion would be an amazing duo. We'll see where he ends up playing the majority of this season. As we talked about before, and Jordan mentioned, Ashton Hampton's kind of a versatile guy, a guy that you could see at nickel, a guy that you could see at safety, a guy that can play corner. He can really play anywhere in the back end with his size and athleticism. So, but absolutely, I could see him taking a huge jump and being one of those lockdown corners opposite of Avion Terrell. So, all for that. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, very excited about the trajectory that he's on, and think that he's going to have a really big sophomore campaign for the Tigers.
Absolutely.
Dylan Spell says, who sees the field first, Ronan O'Connell or Mason Wade?
Mason Wade.
I agree. Mason Wade.
Just based off of what what I've heard out of camp and just throughout since both have gotten on campus, because Ronan O'Connell is a kid that he's dealt with some things that were out of his control. He dealt with some things that were out of his control last year.
Yep.
And I think that kind of put him behind the eight ball. But they really like Mason Wade, and he came in, I think, a little bit more further along than I think even they were expecting. So I think Mason Wade would see the field before O'Connell as it stands right now.
Isaac Smith says, what's the single season tackle record? I could see Sammy Brown breaking that before he leaves.
I actually don't know that off the top of my head.
I'm looking it up now. $178.
Who had 178? That's
Anthony Simmons.
That's insane.
In 1996.
Jesus. I mean, that sounds right. I mean, Anthony Simmons was a freak, but good Lord. I didn't know it was that much.
Jeez. That's an insane amount of tackles. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if he's breaking that.
That's tough, man. That's a tough. That's a lot of tackles. All right, who has the better year between TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco? Who you got your money on?
This is the better year. Okay, so how are we defining? But
are we going just off the statistics, or touchdowns or yards, or I don't know. I guess we'll go a non-subjective way. We'll just go statistical year. Who has the better statistical year?
I'm going to say Bryant Wesco. And the reason why is because from what the bits I've gotten from people, he's a different player. Like he's come along even.
Which is saying a lot, by the way.
Yeah. I saw one person say he might be the best receiver this year. So when you consider what he brings as a deep threat and just the opportunities he's going to get down the field, I'm going to buy in. I'm going to say Bryant Wesco, but I think that doesn't change how I feel about TJ Moore. Like I think he's going to have a great year too. Yeah. It's just there's some.
I think Bryant's got you when you're talking about statistics, right? Yards and things like that. He's a little bit more explosive, right? It's got that big playability. Not that TJ Moore doesn't, but I think you're right. He probably will have a little bit better of a year. But again, that's just getting in the weeds there. Tig says, what wide receiver has a breakout season for this year? I think Tyler Brown, breaks the glass this year. Yeah, I mean, we kind of already talked about Tyler Brown. That would be my guy if I had to pick a breakout, if you will, for this year, just because he spent all of last year injured. And I am still a big believer in Tyler Brown and his ability. I think a lot of Clemson fans have forgotten how good he is. And it's easy to forget because, he basically didn't play for an entire season. And then, you have the breakout of Brian Wesco and TJ Moore. And then obviously Antonio Williams, did his thing as the best wide receiver we had last year. So it's easy to lose sight of who Tyler Brown was. But I think you're correct. I think you're onto something, Tiggs. I think he's going to remind Clemson fans of what caliber of wide receiver he is.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's kind of hard to define breakout because there's not always, like I said, there's only so many touches to go around. But I think Tyler Brown would be the pick. It could be Tristan Smith, but
that's probably a really good pick as well.
Yeah, but I do think that Tyler Brown's just having been in the system 2 years, and
I hope we can get Tristan Smith for 2 years.
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see if that works out. David, thank you for being a channel member, sir. I appreciate you. He says, I think Ricardo Jones could be a sleeper at safety. You talked about him in our sophomore projections, Jordan.
Yeah. I'm a big Ricardo Jones believer. Yeah, that wouldn't shock me at all if he seizes a bigger role this year. Even potentially a starting role. So yeah, big Ricardo Jones guy.
Yeah, I wonder which sophomore breakouts, Intelligent Savage. Wonder which sophomore breakouts we didn't have on the radar would break out this year. I think we kind of talked about a couple of those guys that we could see a little bit earlier in the show when we were talking about the sophomore projections.
Yeah. And shoot, you could name a couple of other. I mean, obviously the linebacker room is kind of wide open right now. What does a year two for Drew Woodaz look like? CJ Kuba Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
I think those two could potentially come in and show you something. Let's see. You still defensive line. I mean, your two second year guys are Kevin Brown Schuler and Champ Thompson. But if you want to talk about true redshirt sophomores, Vic Burley, is an obvious one.
It's Defiling Green. Yeah. I think those two particularly could end up having some really good production this year.
Yep.
David says, by the end of the season, Tristan Smith could be the X factor no one saw coming. He absolutely could be.
He could be. I mean, I really do think Clemson got themselves one.
I think they definitely got one under the radar there.
Yeah.
And just the little bit of interviews that he's already done, with the Two Right Turns podcast and stuff like that, and with the media during spring, you just he's just a guy that's going to go about his business. He's going to work. And he's excited for the opportunity that he's been given at Clemson. And with that coupled with his size and apparently the catches that he's making in practice, I think that's a recipe for a guy that can make a big time addition to the offense in an already crowded wide receiver room.
Yeah.
John's got a BYOG or sell. Riley runs more 4 wide receiver sets than we've seen in a long time, maybe ever.
BYOG for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to
So
take these guys off the field. I mean, you're going
you're
to
going
want
to have to. I mean,
yeah.
you got. I mean, what do we have? 6 dudes that are like
legit
could
starting
legit
caliber
starters. Like you got 6 legitimate starters at wide receiver.
Yeah,
that's crazy. So, all right. Let's see. David says other coaches need to step it up or step up recruiting to keep pace with Coach Luke.
Yeah,
that's a tough pace to keep.
Yeah. It is, but yeah, I get the sentiment. It's like,
yeah,
okay, we're having all this success at offensive line, and safety for that matter. All right, it's time for the rest of y'all to start picking it up. Oh, and obviously the wide receiver class is pretty great too.
Yeah.
So where's that at defensive line? Where's that at linebacker? Where's that at corner?
Right.
So it's one of those things. You already have a couple guys in the boat at corner, but it's you would like a high profile name.
Yeah, you'd like at least one of those, big name guys.
Yeah.
Intelligent Savage. Reese Davis says Cade is his third QB to have a huge season coming off 30-plus touchdowns, 6 picks. Reese would like to see us go deep downfield more this season with our wide receiver core. Do we attack deep more?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we definitely do. With this offensive line, and you assume their growth from last year, which was already pretty significant. I think Cade will be dealing with a lot more clean pockets. Obviously, we've talked in length during this episode about the various weapons that'll be on the outside, the speedy guys, Brian Westco, Cole Turner, guys that can take the top off the defense, Antonio Williams. I think Clemson will be very explosive. I would be surprised if they weren't a very explosive offense in 2025.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing we've talked about a little bit, but I haven't spent a ton of time on it. Is as good as Cade was last year, you weren't a super explosive passing offense,
right?
He was only 7.5 yards per attempt. Like that's not bad, but that's and like the truly explosive passing offenses are at least 8.5 yards per attempt. I think getting that jump from Cade would be pretty big. So like if you told me like Cade finishes the year with like 9 yards per attempt, that's kind of where Deshaun and Trevor were kind of sitting at throughout their career. You see that, like then you're like, okay, and you're hitting more shots down the field, and you're more explosive from that aspect. That tells you a lot, because last season, as good as Cade was, and there were definitely a lot of moments in spurts where you weren't hitting those downfield shots, and the passing offense was kind of stalling a little bit. So like that's another thing that you want to see take a jump in 2025, and it should reflect in that yards per attempt number, adjusted or adjusted yards per attempt number. I think the goal should be 8.5 for Cade. I think that's a good. that's generally considered, like, if you're in the stats world, that's generally considered the threshold for a explosive passing offense.
Yep. All right, Jordan, a couple more, and then we're going to get out of here. It's getting really late. Clemson's top tackler with 178 in 1996, the most tackles in a season by a Tiger in Clemson history. That was a 12-game season, 7-5 Tommy West team. Wow.
I mean, Tommy West had some especially on defense. Like some of those Clemson teams had some dogs, man.
178 tackles in 12 games.
Yeah,
That's insane, dude.
Anthony Simmons, yeah. That's
goodness.
In 12 games, what is that? That's what is that? That's almost almost 15 tackles a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Basically 15 tackles a game. It's insane. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to see that record topple anytime soon.
Yeah.
Especially not in 12 games. That's Intelligent Savage says EA Sports made it on two right turns for promotion of the video game. The iconic Clemson Tiger bus Tigers coming off the bus in the game. Are there any other stadium entrances you would like outside of ours?
I mean, I do enjoy Virginia Tech's.
Yeah.
That's the obvious one. Let's see. I won't name them. That'll make people upset. You know, I do enjoy Notre Dame's. Let's see. I think those would be my two. Like those would be my two. Yeah, I mean, with like Notre Dame's is just kind of iconic. With the what's that sign say? Oh shoot. It's isn't it like a Newt Rockne quote? I can't remember what it is, but the sign they have above the little entryway that they walk and they touch, all the players tap before they go out. Yeah, I'm blanking on what it says right now. If there's any Notre Dame fans listening, they probably want to choke me right now.
Yeah, but jump through the screen.
Give me a break. It's 11:23 Eastern time.
Yeah, it's late. All right, we'll end it right here, Jordan. This is a comment from Wet Sox. It said Jack Smith for Breakout Player of the Year.
I hope so. I hope so, and then I don't hope so, because if he's if he's done well enough to be a breakout player, or how much are we punting? Like that's the question. It's like, all right, yeah, I want him to succeed, but are we punting?
Right. Yeah. I hope not, but yeah, with our punting woes, there's no chance. All right, I said that was the last one, but we'll do one more. David says, BYOG or sell. Cade has 4,000 passing yards, 500 rushing yards, and finishes top 4 in the Heisman voting.
Play like a champion. That's what it was. Thank you, David. Thank you. But all right, I'll answer the. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't. My brain is fried. Buy or sell. Cade has 4,000 yards passing, 500
4,000 passing yards, 500 rushing yards, and finishes top 4 in Heisman voting.
Oh, that's ambitious. Okay, so last year he was 3,600, 36 touchdowns. Well, okay, you didn't mention touchdowns. So he was 3,600 passing yards, 463-ish or whatever it was rushing yards. I'm gonna sell. I mean that's if he has that's gonna be like one of the greatest statistical seasons, like arguably the best statistical season.
I don't know if he quite gets to I'll buy the 500 rushing yards. I don't know if he gets to 4,000 passing yards though.
And I guess it depends.
I will tell you this: if he goes 4,000 passing yards and 500 rushing yards, he better finish top 4 in the Heisman vote.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's an insane season.
That's insane, man. Like that's like up there with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson had 4,000 and 1,000 rushing yards one year.
Yeah,
and
I mean
like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll sell on that. That's very ambitious, but I hope it happens because if that happens, that means that we're probably headed to the place where we want to go this season, which is ultimately the playoffs and hopefully, make some noise and find our way in a national championship somehow. So we'll see. But guys, it's super late. It's 11:26. We've been on here for 2 hours. Appreciate you guys stopping by. I got 41 people in the live chat. If you have not already, hit that like button on your way out. That would be greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing to the show. You've stuck with us for this long already, so you might as well go ahead and subscribe. And we'd love to have you guys in here chopping it up with us in the comment section. But look forward to the Quinn commitment tomorrow around noon. If it goes our way, you'll see us probably doing a special live sometime shortly thereafter. But until next time, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. Go Tigers.
Later, y'all.